So I'm really excited to welcome all of you, and I'm more excited to welcome our speakers. Susan, would you like to introduce yourself to the community?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Suzanne Bednars. I go by Suze. I'm Director of Design Operations for Intuitive, based in Sunnyvale, California, although I'm based in the Hartford, Connecticut area. I'm 7 months into my position, starting up the first design operations organization within Intuitive. Prior to this current position, I worked for Cigna Healthcare, and I established the first design operations practice within Cigna Digital. Excited to be here today and appreciate Fareed for inviting me.
Sure, happy to see you. Thank you for accepting the invitation. Victoria, would you like to go next?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Victoria Chow. I am a senior design program manager at LinkedIn. I work on a product design team that does a lot of the job seeking tools that hopefully people have used at some point. This is actually my first official design operations in tech job. Before this, I was the studio manager at Chronicle Books. And I also have done things like I was a public radio reporter and I planned like a big gala at SF MoMA. So very career, lots of transferable skills for people who are career pivoters. Always happy to talk about that, but happy to talk about planning too.
So this session is more like an entry to the series of these coordination-related open panel sessions. Let's start. So what I would like to ask you first, I see that some people already voted. What kind of current challenges do you have right now? Before we will speak about the challenges, I wanted to ask you three questions. We wanted to ask you three questions. Do your partners, engineering product, use the same issue tracking tools as design? Example, Jira, Monday.com, Coda, or Asana. Could you please just click on this alignment scale to vote like, this is like, are you strongly agree or strongly disagree? Yeah, we can see some of the results already. I'm happy that we have, oh yeah, right now our camp is divided into two camps. Okay, yeah, let's go to the next question. Can the product manager from another product line understand what your design team is working on? This is a really tough question. I see that 8 people, 10 people, 11 people, 13. Oh, and I can see that more than 47 people already joined our FigJam file. So this is great. And let's see the results. Yeah, so here are the results. The next one. Do you think that your team is working on things that are important and aligned with the company goals? This is the toughest question. Wow, I'm impressed that people are on the right side. Let's show the results. And yeah, we can see that, oh, most of the people are on the right side. So this is great. Good to know. Great. So, Suze and Victoria, please, if you have anything to share, would you like to just to go over these three questions and share your thoughts on things that people shared?
Oh my. Okay. I mean, I think that you kind of covered it. I think it's interesting and maybe exciting to see that there's such a range of how people are using tools. I think that LinkedIn's a really big organization and DesignOps is a relatively new, I mean, it's like 20,000 people or more at this point. And like DesignOps is a relatively new function within that. And
Mhm.
so, we are not the ones we were not able to get everybody on the same tool, even though it takes a lot of effort. People have old habits. And so I think even if you're on the left side of that scale, that's okay. Like big, mature, high functioning companies are also on the left side of the scale too, and you can still make it work. But it is easier if everybody's on the right side. It's my reaction. How about you, Suze?
Yeah, I've been in both worlds. So in my previous position, I had more than 12 different tools that our stakeholders or my team was using at any given moment, which made things very challenging in terms of status and consistency and reporting. I was successful in migrating those down to two, which was fantastic. In my current role, we have a slightly better situation, although we still have improvement areas. So we did have most of our stakeholders and project program managers, et cetera, on a single tool, but it wasn't ideal and it wasn't working really well for us. So we are going to be moving our direct team of about 70 to a different one, and we're going to be integrating. So our front end will stay the same on the previous tool for our stakeholders and intake, et cetera, but our execution will go to a different tool that we'll have control over.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, thank you for sharing your thoughts. Yeah, so I think these kind of results are a good indicator for us to understand how we could adjust our content. And most importantly, as we mentioned to all of you before, is that when we started to prepare to this session, we felt like there's so many things that we could cover. So that's why we prepared some materials that we are going to paste here, and we're going to discuss that in a second. But before doing that, we wanted to understand what is your interest, what kind of challenges you are facing right now. So our aspiration is that within this feedback, we will be able to design our next sessions, and will be like a series of open panel sessions around coordination, because this is a huge topic. There is a way how we could do that on the team level, on the program level, how we could connect the dots, and how we could in some ways accelerate or bring more visibility and traceability into the way how we work. So what I would like to ask you is, what are the main challenges that you are facing right now? So please just feel free to duplicate the sticky note, and we will be able to share some of our thoughts based on the challenges that you are facing right now, or maybe questions. So, and yeah, I can see that already some people already started doing the adding voting. So please do that, and we could discuss all of that together. I can see some people already added. Victoria, you added your vote to John Svoboda's sticky note. Can you please share your thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think John's note captures a lot of like our pain point internally at LinkedIn. And I think I'm a little bit less tools focused. I think to coordinate across, like, LinkedIn's a huge company. It has multiple business lines. I think if you're not using like a lot of the enterprise features, you may not realize that there's like marketing, there's like somebody has to manage the checkout flow and design that. There's hiring tools that are very complex and specific to like workflows in that kind of profession. And so it's hard to get everybody on the same thing because the company is so big. And so I think that the like there's a lot of duplication that we've had to do for our planning process, but it also I think until we can get everybody on the same page, I think it's good to focus on the larger strategic role of planning, which is getting everybody aligned, eliminating overlaps in like every product line wants to do something around matching, but if they all look different, that's a problem, right? So if our goal as a design organization is to create like a seamless user experience for everybody, for all of our users, regardless of what they're using, we are going to really optimize for finding a thing that allows people to really align and understand what other people are doing, even if it means sometimes there's a little bit of duplication. That being said, if we could get everybody on Jira or Airtable or something else, that would be a dream. But if you're having trouble with that, you're not alone.
Yeah. Victoria, and I'm really curious to know, like, do you have rituals or ceremonies that helps you to connect people, align? Like, do you have like release planning or sprint planning ceremonies?
Yeah. So my team does, and we work with other so we're job seekers, but if you're a job seeker, you're also related to people who are posting jobs. And if it's on the free flow, it also shows up so there are all these different teams that we have to coordinate with as people who make job seeking features for our users. And so honestly, what we've sort of landed on is trying to use the lowest common denominator tools, which for us is actually just Google Sheets. We have a good old fashioned spreadsheet, and there are fields that people fill out. We have a meeting that our designers lead, and they go through their like major initiatives, and we invite all of our stakeholders to like come and discuss. Everybody has like a 15-minute slot. But it's actually been, I mean, as much as it's like, oh my gosh, that sounds so manual, that's like not like an automated thing. In the end, we really eliminated a lot of like headaches around around like overlapping product lines, everybody like trying to build the same thing. It's like we're all going to do like this kind of new content together. So yeah, like getting everybody to create like a common reference point. And I'm sorry, there's some construction nearby. Like there's always so I apologize for that noise. But I think creating a common reference point so that people can go back and look at it if they missed the meeting, if they don't remember everything, creating a time for people to come together and present and ask questions, and then sending communications afterwards to all of your relevant stakeholders. So that's your engineers, your product managers, your product marketing managers, but also those functions that are on other product lines that touch yours. And having a centralized place where all of those kinds of plans go actually goes a long way, even if it's not like a perfect, seamless. It's not the most beautiful way to do it, but it has been effective for our ultimate goal, which is aligned planning. Single source of truth. That's what I heard.
And do you have it? Yeah, sorry to interrupt. And do you have it as like recurring meeting where you are just facilitating and showing, okay, here's the 3 design teams that we have, here's the work that they are doing, how it's done? Like, I'm just curious.
I'm sorry, I kind of missed the first part of your question. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, again? Is it like, do you have some kind of recurring meeting to do this planning, or it's more like ad hoc?
Oh no, it's recurring. So we do it, we spend a lot of time in planning, but the planning meeting is usually about a month before the new quarter begins. So I think there are a lot of rituals that happen at sort of the high level where it's like the execs want certain kinds of documents and templates in place. And so it's like, these are all the things that feed into eventually us communicating to our VP of product and our what we are doing across each of these business lines. But in order to make that manageable, and I think the level that you work at for an executive is different than as an individual contributor, right? So I think this is us working as individual contributors to understand what each other are doing, so that when we all show up at the exec meeting, we aren't all proposing like 6 versions of the same kind of product.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you very much for sharing. Do you have any comments, or would you like to go through some of the sections?
Yeah, no. So I think somebody or a couple of people mentioned Scrum here, and that really piqued my interest, because one of the biggest challenges I'm facing right now, it's not really a challenge, I guess it's an opportunity because it's exciting and it's going well, is we've actually implemented lightweight Scrum, and more agile marketing. My organization is a combination of what most people would call creative ops or creative, as well as UX and digital. So it's really interesting because historically the group was very siloed, very waterfall, under a branding creative organization, and we broke them up into 9 to 10 separate Scrum teams. They're no longer siloed. Now each team has a designer and a writer and a PO and a Scrum master and stuff. So that's been really sort of fascinating and interesting to support and implement the change, but kind of watch some of the challenges that have surfaced as a result of that, which is what Scrum does. Scrum really highlights, your challenges within the organization. To your previous question to Victoria, one of the many benefits we have seen is that those regular meetings, our scaled sprint reviews, our daily stand-ups, well, at first the team kind of was like, oh, another meeting, I don't have time for this 2-3 hour retro, every 2 weeks is a problem. Now that we're 6-7 months into it, they've really seen the benefit of it. They love the connection between the team, they love the regular checkpoints, they're seeing great benefit from that. And our stakeholders internally are also seeing that great benefit now that we have scaled sprint reviews, where they all come together and there's that transparency now of seeing, now I know why you didn't get to my work, because you're doing this other person's work, which is a higher priority. So while that has been a challenge, getting this mindset and the behavior change to work a creative team under Scrum, it's also been hugely rewarding, and we're finally starting to see some of the benefits of it.
Great. And I'm curious to know, like, is your design teams are integrated with, you mentioned like it's more creative ops, right? So the challenge that we are having in digital design, product design, is that like we have design teams, And then we have engineering squads.
We have both. So we have digital marketing, which is, we have UX and content strategy, and our digital team supporting intuitive.com, et cetera. And then we have media production, we have our photo studio, we have our design studio, we have presentation design. So it's a combination. And it's really interesting to make all of that work together under a corporate marketing organization, as opposed to an IT org where I used to be, where digital was under IT.
Great. Yeah, thank you for sharing. So let me go through some of the notes that people shared, and we could share out loud some of our comments on that. Integration and automation. Research and design tools aren't fit for cross-functional workflow. While they have APIs, there are plugins that naturally consume and feed logical data flows to our cross-functional management tools. This puts a lot of labor on teams and ops to create custom plumbing. Wow, this is like, yeah, we just need to create a poster on out of the sticky note. This is the main. I don't know why design is still not like mature enough the way how other practices are. Yeah, like I'm really happy that regarding like research, we have more and more tools within the last 2-3 years. But before that, it was so simple and yeah, no integrations. But now it becomes more and more advanced. So hopefully we will be able to resolve that. Yeah, and Susan, Victoria, if you have some notes, just share. Unmute yourself and share. I'll just go through some of the notes that people shared. Getting designers to move from Adobe files to Figma and providing enough training for them. Interesting. Is it possible to have shared design operational responsibilities between design practitioners, mainly seniors, and achieve good results? Good question. Suze, Victoria, would you like to answer?
I'd be curious to hear from the person who posted this about like an example of something that is a responsibility they'd like to see their team do.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. So yes, Nikolov, if you would bring more details. But I think like every time you don't need to have a specific person to do the DesignOps work. I remember there was a talk in Rosenfield Media Design Summit last year or 2 years ago where design managers, lead designers, and others, they are still working and they are doing some like DesignOps work as well, like maybe 20 or 30% of their time. So like you don't need to have a dedicated person. You need to have a dedicated person on scale when you have multiple teams and you need to connect them. But if you are starting small, yeah, everyone could do DesignOps. It's not it's just a part of our responsibilities, right? Cross-functional culture. Fitting our work across the Scrum framework has also been challenging, but we are altering ceremonies to give us flexibility in how we work in our programs. Interesting. We are in our infancy in both design and digital product. I feel like we struggle with influencing our partners in other teams, product dev, due to silo walls that leadership is keen to hold up for fear of losing control. Wow, this is a great point. This, along with a lack of knowledge, experience in design, has disjointed organization, which leads to a broken culture. No design thinking or desire to evolve, optimize in meaningful ways. Tools are not the problem for us, but rather transparency and alignment across the org walls. When the problem originates at the top of the organization, how do we influence up? This is not related to our open panel discussion, but Suze, Victoria, do you have some comments on that?
Yeah, I was kind of struggling to follow. There's a lot in there. That's a lot of.
I think this is something that we've felt before, and I think this is like a who's in leadership kind of question. I think if you have strong leadership who can be persuasive, I think that's honestly been the most effective thing. I mean, I think one thing that my team did, and this is like not totally on topic, but it's not off topic either, is set up. They've been branded as design OKRs, and they've sort of been, or like design goals, and they've sort of been, they're going to transform into maybe not just being design goals anymore. But I think essentially like the work of trying to like demonstrate the strategic value that design brings is like a long road, but it's a really important one. And I think one way that we were able to do it is by like working with like a strong PM to come up with like some sort of like product vision, and then being able to demonstrate that to somebody at like the leadership level to show how like this is something that we all worked on together. This is how it influences. I think at the bottom, like demonstrating that you can influence the business and like that you can move the bottom line with ideas, with your strategy, with your knowledge of your members and your users. I think that is really helpful. And if you have leadership that's like totally I think we're lucky that we have leadership that is really interested in like whatever it takes to build like a stronger product and keep LinkedIn being innovative and useful for its members. And if you can get people on that page, then you can start to just try to like inch your way in. But it was sort of like wedging your way through a door, right? Like you're trying to like scoot in as the garage door closes. So like they're making the plan and you're like, wait, we have something, we're working on something. And just I think advocating for yourself and building that muscle takes a long time, but you can.
I agree with that, Victoria, on both points. I think advocating is really important, and I think leadership. So I completely agree with you. And if I'm understanding this comment, at least in part, I can relate to it. And that what I'm constantly having to do is over and over and over reiterate and ask for what is our priority, and to educate my teams to say, it's okay to say no to work. Like say, sorry, this is our priority. You can't just give us something now. This is going to take away from our primary goals, et cetera. So it has taken a lot of effort to consistently talk to leadership, reinforce with leadership, get them all in the same room. Like I said, our scaled sprint reviews have been helping with this because we have had silos, we have had competing priorities, we haven't been clear on priorities. And when our team gets 500 plus new efforts a month, it's kind of important that we know how we're supposed to organize that work. If everything is number one, nothing is number one.
Yeah, that's true.
And to jump on that real quick, I think, Suze, I'm sure, is already doing this in a more complex way than we do, but we do a lot of sizing LinkedIn where it's like, how many weeks do you think it will take? And we actually like publish every quarter, like we have 13 weeks this quarter, but we actually have company shutdown for the holidays and we have this many public holidays. And so it's like, I think being able to like, even having an artifact that's just like, this is how many days we have to work or how many weeks we have to work, and being like, if you asked me to do this thing was also listed as a priority. Like, I think just like having like, something in
what's going to fall off, right? You can't do everything. So sure, this is the number one priority. What are we not going to do then? And people are so hesitant to say that, but I can tell my team all the time, I will protect you. I'll give you that air cover. You have to say that. They can't just keep jamming stuff in the pipe and expect it all to come out, in a decent format.
So write it down.
Yeah, this is great. So yeah, from my thing, like I've been in this like team before as well. Updating team compositions and making sure that design teams are not responsible for product, but product managers are. Have product teams and make sure that product managers are making decisions, not design leadership. Design leadership could provide some guidance or feedback on the things, but product managers are the one who are making decisions. So what I've heard from other teams that I've worked with, they were mentioning that, we have one feedback from product management and we have another change request from design leadership. So we don't know who to follow. And like the most important thing is that product managers are the ones who are owning the strategy, the roadmap, the budget. So that's why they have more visibility on the things that we need to do. But having design critique sessions is a great place for design leadership to share their feedback. And most importantly, they need to focus not on the product. They can focus on the product, but for me personally, I think that it's important to focus on how we could evolve design practice, how we could move from generalist to more specific practices like dedicated research, user researcher, or dedicated UX writer, etc. So yeah, like this is a huge topic. Let's not spend too much time. I wanted to go through some of the materials that we prepared. So sorry, we will just go through all of them fast. Getting everyone, product and design teams, to use our tools in the same way, connecting product owners to line up design into the pipeline so that we iterate more and design research ahead of development. Yeah, this is great. Like, and we could speak about the planning. We will share some of the practices here on covering this point. Adoption of creative ops functions in the large organization. The creative ops role is new and there are questions around value added. This pairs with creative strategy and research value to improving a customer first approach. Other things, We are looking on tools that can roll up project practice and business initiatives into balanced scorecard that can push up and down alignment for teams and org-wide initiatives. Interesting. Thank you, John, for sharing. Version control between front-end design teams, structure of Figma projects and design files, documentation of results, local component libraries, different methodologies. Yes, there are so much things. Thank you for sharing. So after this call, I will synthesize everything, and that will be a great source for us to have another event focusing on specific things. So Victoria, would you like to go first and share some of the materials that you prepared? You can just take it from here, copy and paste it into our FigJam file.
Oh, okay. I put it in the other FigJam file. Give me a sec. Sorry about that.
Yeah, 1 second. I will just copy and paste it into the main one.
You got it. Okay.
And could you spotlight yourself, please, on the top right corner by clicking on your user picture?
Sure. Let me
Thank you.
reorg, re-rack. That's me, spotlight me. Hi, everybody. So I think, as I've said like a couple times now, it's like we are not all on the same tool, and our goal is really just to get people to really align on what a plan is in a given quarter. I think part of that alignment, I know somebody had mentioned something about like giving design time to do their like exploration work, and sort of like, I think really we're trying to move away, and we've successfully done this, is getting other functions to see design as like a strategic partner in developing a product, and less of like we're not like a Kinko's where you're like, can you just make this button? Or, you know, you want to be seen as like a person who has a point of view that's helpful and useful for the product overall. So we came up with we were in a situation on my team and a couple of related teams where everybody was trying to build the same thing. Nobody knew what the other people were doing. There were a lot of overlaps. It was hard to like pick a direction. And we had had a reorg. Here's the full context. We had a reorg. And so we were told that like technical program managers were going to like oversee the planning, and they had a way of doing it. And so we were like, okay, great. We'll just integrate, you want to meet people where they are. And so it's like, okay, we'll figure out a way to integrate into this. And we were basically told that planning was for engineering, and that design was not like we were included because we were invited to the meeting where they went line by line and like discussed their capacity, but it wasn't like they weren't really interested in like what they called the backlog, or which is like all of the work that goes into providing something that engineering can build. And so we'd have like these like fires around like the engineers don't have anything to do. It's like mid-quarter, like it's like everybody's like scrambling to feed the engineers. And that's not a good situation. I don't know if other people on this team have experienced this. And so basically I and some of my colleagues in DesignOps who were on different product lines set up and came up with this way of trying to get everybody aligned earlier. So we decided like principles for picking your planning solution is like, we are advocates for users. We should have a voice in product planning. We need to start conversations early, meet people where they are, not where you want them to be. This was, I think, specifically in reference to design is on Airtable and Figma, engineering's on Jira, product is afraid of both sometimes. And so trying to figure out what is the solution that everybody's comfortable with. We're going to own the design planning piece. I think at one point we had tried to have PMs like sort of own they are the ultimate decision makers, but it wasn't, they weren't really thinking in like the design way, or like thinking about like the user first. It like went immediately into metrics, which keeps us away from thinking about what is ultimately useful for our users and members. And then align where you can, but do what works for your team. So I think a lot of people in the comments have said things about basically like not everybody's on the same tool, and it's really frustrating. We have to duplicate, and it's like, it is annoying that I do a lot of duplicative work, and it's not the best operation. I'd love to learn from Suze about her tools and tricks, and the ultimate goal is to get us to a point where everybody understands what we are making, everybody understands why we're making it, and to create something that's really useful for our members so that they stay and they continue to see LinkedIn as the place to grow their career. So our planning structure then is we would have a design planning meeting. Before the meeting, people would add items to a Google Sheet. Designers would estimate a quarterly allocation to the best of their ability, but we'd also had a deadline for all the product managers to write a PRD, or if not a PRD, what we call a mini spec, which is like a lightweight, like, this is what we're trying to do document. That isn't like a full, like a PRD is a very specific template. And then we have this meeting. But I think other things that are useful for you all to know. So quarterly allocation, this is like if we have 13 weeks in a quarter, we have, let me just fill LinkedIn. This is not a marketing channel, I know, but like LinkedIn's a really nice place to work. We have a lot of time off and like special things that mean that we can't, not every day is a work day at LinkedIn. There are all these like other like special, like take care of yourself days. And we had half day Fridays this summer. That's all I'll say about that. But you have to build that in, because people, if you have a no meeting day or like a day when nobody's supposed to be working, like people expect that to be honored because that's coming from the top. And so you have to plan around it. I think I'll do roles and process. So before the meeting, it's all centered around a meeting, an old-fashioned tool, right? You're making a list of potential projects and requests, including requests for your research team, content marketing. A thing that I learned in the process of this is getting something to product marketing, which is separate from user research for us, early, because they have to get budget. If they're like going to hire some firm to do a study, they need to budget for that. Our budget process, because we're a large corporation, is very lengthy and detailed. So got to get that early. But basically, you're just adding and creating your single source of truth, which is a planning sheet that everybody is comfortable using. You have the meeting, which is about presenting the plans and then taking questions. So this is a point when people are like, oh, wait, we should be collaborating on that. Or like, have you talked to the profile team about what they're doing? I heard they're working on X, Y, or Z thing that's similar to what you're working on. So that's like kind of like the biggest point of all of this work, is writing down what you want to do, but also figuring out where you could be collaborating and creating something even better, where you should step back because somebody else is really far along and has a framework for it, etc. I think post-meeting is also important. So it's like, if you have 15 minutes per person while you're presenting plans, people need to follow up on like issues and questions before like the ultimate planning deadline. You need to confirm what you're actually going to do once you've done this follow-up work and figured out how to like set up your swim lanes between you and other product teams. And then you need to document and communicate plans. So it's like putting the link in the right place on the internal SharePoint page, or sending an email or sending a Slack message just so everybody has seen it. So I think one last thing is this is for a different presentation where we had silly dogs as our image, but I think one thing to point out here is we, as a large organization, sometimes like internally, we are not organized in a way that is intuitive to other people. And so we made a decision to organize by user relevance rather than product org. Because if it's like, if you're working on something that's like for enterprise hirers, it's like they're not that necessarily that excited about what's happening for a consumer job seeker, right? So trying to think about it in terms of how the user does it. And this is how we're like asserting our point of view, that we understand what members need, or this kind of user needs, and we're going to build something that works for them and make it a holistic experience is ultimately the goal. And then these are the people that we brought in. Obviously, every company's different. And the agenda is everybody gets 15 minutes to share plans and then field questions. So it's, that dictates the level of granularity you get into, and also gives people, you don't get a lot of like full questions like, well, show me this design and we'll go through it together in this meeting. But it's It's the place where you flag like, hey, I think that overlaps with what we're doing. Can we work on it? And that's sort of the post-meeting work that gets you where you need to go. We did have a lot of wins, which might not mean as much to you if you don't work at LinkedIn, but essentially by forcing people to articulate your plans, you get people excited, you get people interested, you get people to work together, which is ultimately the goal. And yeah, I mean, it really worked. And it took a couple cycle, I think, to what Suze was saying earlier, it takes a long time to get people on board. There were a couple meetings early on where PMs going into it would email me and say, like, why do I have to go to this? I already like do planning. It's like, yeah, but nobody else knows what you're planning. Like, this is our role, is to think about our users. And now after that, they told me that it was the best meeting they'd ever been to. That they held clarity. You know, it's like people who had been naysayers early became converts. And so that's a big win. Anyway, that was a very long-winded description of what we do at LinkedIn, but I'm curious to hear what other people do. Suze, I don't know if you can give us some highlights.
Yeah. In my past life, again, so not my current role, but in my previous role, planning really was from the top down, which for the most part worked pretty well. And why I say that is because we're struggling now and that we're looking for our senior leaders and the top to tell us, you know, where are we going? What do you need? And for us to be part of the conversation. And they're still struggling a little bit. In my previous organization, it was extremely helpful to know very clearly from like the C-suite, these are our 3 product launches this year. These are the 3 segments we're moving into. And anything you do that does not support this should be questioned. And that everybody was given the ability and the power to question that. Now, mind you, the product manager who owned the digital experience for one of them was not the most popular guy in the house because he did question. He pushed back regularly to everyone. But the team that supported him greatly appreciated that because he was protecting them. They were able to execute on their assigned work because he was stopping people at the door. Like, sorry, no, you can't come here. One of my previous content strategists that worked for me used to joke and call me the bouncer because she felt like I said, you in, you out. Nope, yes, go, you can go, you're here. I'm looking to emulate a similar model within my current role because I think the teams are struggling, lacking that. Like very clear, and Victoria, you alluded to this, across the enterprise agreed upon goals and plans that can then cascade down to our tactics and what our specific deliverables might be to support that. So we did it better in my past life, still trying to figure out in a current one. And that's largely due to the state of the organization. We've experienced extreme growth, fair amount of hiring, thousands in the past couple of years. So there's been a lot of change. And with change comes a need to constantly revisit your processes and how you're approaching things.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, so we added a couple of things. Victoria, you also added some. We get these priorities from leadership at LinkedIn, and it has been very helpful to prioritize. Yeah, and I'm curious, like one of the other interesting things that I recently learned is that as a part of coordination, it's not important for us to track team performance, how much story points or how much screens or how much things they covered, but most importantly is to cover how much impact they created. If the leadership team is providing OKRs and they are saying that, oh, we would like to increase user engagement by 20%, and there was a team who was working on that, no matter how much screens, no matter how much prototypes, no matter how much research studies they performed, did we achieve this goal or not? Did we achieve this key result or not? So this is like one of the interesting things to capture as a performance, as an outcome of the team. So.
Yeah, Fareed, I totally agree with you. And I think that's a bit of a challenge in some organizations to get the planners, the leaders, the product owners, et cetera, to think that way because they think, oh, my product was launched, it was done. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Think, earlier on, like what is your OKR? How are you measuring success? Stop measuring output over outcome.
Yeah.
So I completely agree with you. And that's been a challenge to educate and get those individuals to think differently because they're checking a box saying, well, I told you I was going to launch by November 1st and we launched. That's not something that I think is a really valuable measure.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Victoria, we have a question for you. How are the planning outputs documented? Do they become a separate stream of epic stories in Jira or other management tool, or a custom field on the existing one?
They eventually become epics in Jira. That is not the piece of it that I own. And so, I mean, I'm not very good at Jira, to be honest. And so, I mean, I think it's like the planning outputs for what we're doing. This is like, we do all of this before it gets into Jira, and Jira is really like our engineering planning tool. And so this is really about trying to make sure we have like a cohesive like plan for what we're going to build eventually. And then it gets transferred into Jira by like a TPM. So I don't know.
Yeah, that is our desired state. So we do have planning in one specific tool that is done by our marketers and our leadership, et cetera. But once that's approved, because of the integration, it does become an epic in Jira, and our team executes that within Jira. That is our model, or will be.
Yeah.
Future state.
Yeah, I can also share some of the materials that I prepared. 1 second. Yeah, we can speak about the intake model. Oops.
Yeah, if you want to touch on intake, that was one of the things I brought to share and talk about. Fareed, are you moving it over for me? If you are, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's right there.
Now.
Yeah, over to the right.
We'll pose on the right side. Yeah, can you please start?
Yeah, so our intake model in the past fell literally between as many in some organizations it does. There's planning, there's intake, and then there's execution. And in my past life, we had our intake was 7 different systems. It could be someone's email, it could be SharePoint, it could be a Prima. We had so many different ways that work came to us, and it was highly problematic. For one example, my leadership would come to me and say, Suze, I need a report for a meeting tomorrow. Tell me everything we have in the pipeline. And I'd be like, can I have 2 weeks? Because it will take me 2 weeks to like pull the data from all of those systems, format it, review it, edit it. So what we were able to do is we did great analysis, and my former staff member, if she was here, I would like scream out her name because she was amazing. She did all of the analysis in terms of defining the problem statement, doing the user research, et cetera, and then streamlining it to a single intake form, which did take us time, the process around it and doing significant communication and training around it. And I'm so excited still, this is actually in my DesignOps portfolio that I brag about this, because what we achieved is we were able to repurpose a single resource to do additional, more high value work. We decreased our timeline to get work in and execute on it because it was going right to our product owners for triage and review and approval. And we made our stakeholders much more happy with us because they were finally getting the transparency, things were going more smoothly, they were getting right to the source of the individuals who would be executing on their work versus waiting in some days upwards of 2 to 3 weeks before we even picked that intake out of the system to start looking at it. So we did a significant lift of work there, but it was equally significant in the amount of work that we were able to push through in a more quicker, like 75%, as you can see here, is what we decreased our time to triage and get work done. So this was really successful, and I highly recommend looking at and evaluating what is your demand management or your intake process right now and where you might have some opportunities for improvement, because that obviously ties between your planning and your execution.
Yeah, and I'm curious to know, like the problem statement part, is it the way how designers were facilitating the discussions with people who requested the?
All of the above. It was coming into us, the way it was coming into us. Was there a creative brief? Was there not a creative brief? Did they need to have it done yesterday? Is it like next quarter? The data that came to us was very problematic, both from a product owner perspective, which then got passed, bad data in gets bad data out. So our design team had a hard time understanding it. So we were just constantly churning and taking too much time. So we, improved the front end in terms of the quality of input that came to us, decrease the amount of time for even the stakeholders to complete the intake forms, because we did require the time. Okay, you have to go through this 25 screens in a Primo, you have to have a creative brief, we won't even no. Let's start the dialogue, let's build a relationship, let's find out what you're trying to achieve, and let's work with you, as opposed to, because their abandon rates were astronomical. They're like, I don't want to bother with this, I'm just going to call Julie at her desk because I know she'll do this for me and give me the the right process.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I really like the highlight section. Great results. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, Victoria, do you have any comments on that?
No, I mean, I'm like curious about Reich, and I want to Suze, let's talk later.
Oh my gosh, I usually try to remove public names. My bad.
Yeah.
Yes, it was Reich that was our ultimate solution. but
Yeah.
didn't
How
mean
long
to
did it
spell
take
out
to train people to do this tool? Because I think about how a lot of, and this is maybe like my personal philosophy, is
Yes.
give people what they need to give you what you need, and it's like it's okay if I have to do a little more work to get us there.
Yep.
Maybe that's why I'm not a director and you are, but like
So the front end of it was literally a simple web form with some branching and some logic based upon the way they answered the questions. And that was so simplified. And it was a URL, and we had it in our email signatures, we had it in our intranet site. They knew everywhere how to engage us. That was the stakeholder and the user experience, which was a Rike-based web form. But then once it came to us, I was able to automate the workflow on the back end that automatically routed to product owners, got deposited into specific folders. The intake lead was able to peek at it. I could immediately report off of it. It just streamed a lot for me. And again, my bad. I didn't mean to have the product name there. I usually try to be agnostic at these type of talks.
Great. Yeah. So I can also share some of the things here. I think the most important thing that we can hear from this session is that if we are speaking about intake model, it all depends on your design organization maturity model. Sometimes it could be very simple, right? It's just like some discussions in Microsoft Teams or Slack. In some cases, it might be very much more complicated, where you need Excel or Airtable or Coda, some of the tools. But what I like the most is the Jira Service Desk. Again, I'm not promoting the tool here. It's just the tool that I really enjoyed working, and it's made for intake. It's made for customer requests, but it also could be used internally. For example, for design system, if someone would like to request a new component or new pattern, they could go through the service desk and write an email to specific predefined email that will create a ticket directly in Jira. So you could see how much requests you're getting, from whom, etc. And you could also think about the resolutions and make some interesting metrics out of it. So here is the design organization maturity model. The first one is for smaller teams where we have like 1 to 15 designers. It's very simple. The practice metrics team, this is the thing that I mentioned before in our previous discussion, that like this is the place when design leadership is moving into more recommendation approach, where they are not owning the backlog of the product managers are, but they can give recommendations from design principles perspective or from like patterns and other things. But product managers are owning the budget, are owning the roadmap, are owning the product roadmap. The next one is more advanced shared service teams, where you are becoming larger and larger. Like it applies for 40 to 90 designers, where you have design system as a shared team that is not connected to one specific design team or one specific engineering squad. It's shared across every team members, and everyone can work with them. Some of the examples: research lab, design system, UX writing, content strategy, etc. The next one is much more complex, competency center. When you have, it's also named as center of excellence. Some people are using these terms differently, but like when you have center of excellence that is responsible for making sure that we are evolving as a part of design as a practice. So they're focusing on the skill metrics, they're focusing on the knowledge sharing, they're focusing on internal trainings, etc., and they're focusing on internal promotions and assessment sessions. And the last one is much more advanced and like complicated, where instead of just having center of excellence, shared services, these metrics-based teams, we also have internal communities or guilds around specific interests. So yeah, I'm a fan of Jira Service Desk. Here's one of the example that I was doing for us, where we had this really complex intake model in Jira, and we were moving into Service Desk, and we were trying to understand how exactly we could create boards for specific people so they could know their status of their request as well. So when we're speaking about intake, it's also important to communicate to the requester that, oh, your request is now in progress, or your request is now assigned to a specific designer, please follow up with them. And also understanding and making sure that all the processes are interconnected. Also thinking about the workflow and issue statuses that you will have. Again, this is example of Jira. I'm not promoting Jira here. It's just like one of the favorite tools, for sure, after Coda. But here, when you will think about the statuses, also important to think about the metrics that you would like to capture. because in most of the cases for intake, sometimes you can transfer this request and say that it's not related to design department, for example. So when you will have dedicated resolutions, dedicated issue statuses, you will be able to track in the future all the metrics around, okay, here's like we got 2,000 requests for the last quarter, and like 200 of them was transferred to another department like marketing because it's not related to product design, or they were canceled because like the requester didn't find the budget for that initiative, etc. Here, you can use Service Desk for the main goal for Service Desk is to have this customer-facing intake model, but you can also use it internally because, as I mentioned to you before, when you have really complex team structure, this tool will help you to capture all the requests that you are getting as a team, as a practice, and then make some metrics and also give visibility for the requesters that their requests were taken into their consideration and other things. And also the cool part about Service Desk, you can set up the contact email and just share it on your like Confluence page or any other places as your like department place, where if someone have a question like, oh, I need help with discovery workshop, can someone like facilitate that for our product area, for our product team? And they can just write to one specific email, and this email will automatically generate the Jira ticket inside Service Desk. And you could also like see all these requests and manage all of them, and most importantly, see the metrics out of them, see the metrics out of all these requests, and then assign and connect it with specific Jira tickets. I know that we are out of time. We also wanted to discuss, and like this is the problem with this topic, coordination, is that we have so much things to cover. I will add some of the other things that I've prepared to the board, but we will not be able to cover that, unfortunately. But we will do that in the next time. More about the planning, how you could do the planning. Again, there are more advanced tools in Jira that will allow you to do the better planning on the program side. You could also do that in Coda. Another interesting point here is that in Coda, you could not only visualize the planning, but you could connect different sources of information like company OKRs, insights management, product metrics, competitive intelligence, issue tracking into one place and have more integrated knowledge, single source of truth. And here, one of the interesting things around program coordination maturity model, I've prepared 5 levels. If you have any questions, please share them. Around execution, like this is the way how we adapted Jira for designers, where we visualized all the statuses, visualized the whole design product delivery process, and mapped all the statuses into specific issue types and understood what kind of relationships do we have there and what kind of automations we could bring. So again, we could create scalable system. And here are some of the examples of how we came up with some issue types and how they are integrated. Also, I was using Coda to pull metrics out of Jira to understand the past behavior and understand which statuses are working right now and which statuses people are not using at all. Speaking about measure, here are some of the examples of how to create dashboards. And the last one, if you're interested in how to switch to like and integrate designers into Jira, here's the link. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. But most importantly, is designers. It's a great practice. It's a good practice to have our own dedicated issue type that is called design, that we could integrate under Epic, under user stories, so we will give more visibility. Because other practices, other disciplines have their own issue types usually, like QAs, backend, frontend, but designers don't. And I feel like this is the point where we are all like disconnected from the product because we are not using the same tool and they are not able to see what kind of things we are working on. Yeah. But thank you very much for joining. Let's set another open panel discussion and we will speak only about specific topics. Maybe we will cover intake in more details. Then we will go through the planning, execution, and measuring part. So that will be interesting. So if you are not a part of Friends of Figma yet, make sure that you are part of the newsletter so you will have a notification about the new event that will be shared soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Victoria, for joining the session. I really enjoyed working with you. yeah, let's keep in touch. And thank you very much for investing your time and joining the community.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Farid.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.